Hey solos, how can you use women and women's stories to enhance your solo travels to Disney World? Solo spoiler, there are so many women and women's stories that are represented across Walt Disney World that often are not given the due that they deserve for being really empowering stories that can help you frame your solo vacation. And I think that that is a real missed opportunity. Hi everyone, it is Samantha. Olaf may not know who Samantha is, but now you do, and welcome to Disney Solo Magic, the #1 podcast for solo travel to Disney World. In this episode, in honor of Women's History Month, I'm going to talk about some different Disney characters and representations of women around the park as a way to help you think about your own solo vacation, to inspire you to take your solo vacation, and to help you kind of work through barriers of your solo vacation, such as anxiety or loneliness, to really have the most amazing time. And I'm really into this episode, so I hope you are too. And again, I feel like I'm lisping, so hopefully you can't hear that and it doesn't bother you like it bothers me. When I listened to last week's episode back, I was like, oh yeah, you can't hear the lisp at all, but again, I can hear it in my brain. Speaking of last week's episode, thank you all so very much for all of your early survey results. So like noontime on Tuesday. So the episode had been out for a few hours by then. I just checked to see if anybody did the survey. And I said this on social media. So if you didn't see this, I'm saying this to you again. When I saw what people had voted for like my solo trip to Disney, I just thought, yeah, you all are my people. I'm glad we all found each other. I'm so glad we all found each other. And thank you so much for filling out that survey, for all of you who've done. So in case this is a new concept, in case you weren't able to listen last week, I set up a survey for you to help me plan my upcoming solo vacation at the end of March, beginning of April. And I have 5 questions there about like, should I do this or should I do that? Should I do this or should I do that? Interestingly, very few people who listen to this podcast care about water parks. So that's really interesting. Thanks for contributing to my desire for shopping. But anyway, you can overrule that. I am going to do what the survey results say. So there's 5 questions, help to plan my vacation, but then there are 2 other pages of questions. That sounds like a lot. It's not. It'll take you no time at all to finish the survey. That will really help me understand the listenership, things that you like, things that you want more of, stuff like that. And it's been so wonderful to see your responses. I know that a few people have identified that they're interested in doing their own solo stories. That's amazing. I will get in touch with you, I think, in April, so don't worry, I haven't forgotten you. And the suggestions for upcoming episodes are also really, really awesome. I feel like I basically have enough programming to take me through to September now, which is kind of exciting. And then also kind of like, I don't know. It's like, there isn't a live room for, I guess, movement. I mean, of course, it's my podcast. I can do whatever I want. But anyway, I have so many ideas. Thank you so much for your suggestions. And speaking of September, or programming for September, so if you've listened to the podcast, and you might have heard the solo story that I did with Lauren only last month. She is also on social media as like Disney Days 55. I'm pretty sure that's it, but her link for her social media will be in the description below. And so she sent me an email last week, and she's like, Samantha, you should come to Orlando for the D23 event. And the D23 event is a like fan expo. Normally it's held at Disneyland, but this year is going to be held at Walt Disney World. And I was like, oh, yeah, I could go. And then I looked at the dates, solos. I looked at the date, and guess when the D23 conference is? My birthday. So I was like, yeah, that is an excellent idea. also, the conference is being held at Coronado, as you know, my favorite resort. It's not my favorite resort, but it is a conference resort. So I think I'm really interested in experiencing it as a conference resort, being part of that conference. So as a part of the conference, the rooms at Coronado, if you look at the prices of the rooms through the D23 event website, are listed for $200 American dollars, which is over $100 less than what they are listed on the main website. Even though the discount for the summer hasn't really been activated on the Disney website yet, the $200 for the rooms at Coronado is an incredibly good deal. So one of the things that people have wrote about a couple times on the surveys is doing something like a meetup. Now, I love that idea. I have always loved that idea, but that's really hard to coordinate because so many people are coming from so many different places. But solos, the end of August, beginning of September, I think is a great time to try to bring some solos together. You don't have to go to the conference. I was worried about the cost, for example, but I was able to book my room without having to get any sort of D23 package. I mean, I did eventually. But I didn't need to at first. And I know that weekend is tricky. I know because for 43 years, I guess not 43 years, for 38 years, I have difficulties planning birthday parties because it's Labor Day weekend. So people are usually traveling. And I know school starts in Toronto at Labor Day. It starts weirdly in August for some U.S. states. That's weird. You all are weird for that. But anyway, I know the fact that Labor Day is a difficult time for some people. But anyway, let's kind of shoot for that. Let's see if we can get a few solos at Disney World around that time. And it would be great to do D23 events. But also, we could, I don't know, just get a non-alcoholic drink at the Three Bridges Bar at Coronado. And I can silently, in my brain, talk about, talk about why the Coronado is beautiful, but the storyline doesn't work. I'm sure everyone wants to hear that. So anyway, just kind of keep that in mind. And remember, if you do book a room for Disney, any time in the summer, and there isn't a discount available yet, you can always go back after you have made your reservation and modify your reservation to see if discounts are available. I do that all the time in order to get the dates that I want and then make sure that I get the discounts that I want. So anyway, there you go. That's some information. You can follow me on all the social medias down below. Down below this episode, there's links to Threads, to Facebook, to Instagram, as well as links to Apple, Spotify, and YouTube, all the places that you can hear this episode. On last week's episode, I said, could we just get to 30 subscriptions on YouTube? Just so it doesn't look super sad. And I'm happy to report that as of today, we're at 36 subscriptions on YouTube. So thank you to all of you who subscribed. Again, you don't need to listen. It's really just for the number so it doesn't look so sad. I just want to put a disclaimer to be there's more listeners on Apple. There's more listeners on Spotify. Anyway, so thank you very much for that. Please make sure that you rate and review and subscribe and share this podcast with other people so that they know about it. And it is so many of you have said that you found the episodes by doing a search for different Disney podcasts. And knowing that it's not through Instagram, it's not through Facebook, it's not really through Threads, although there are a few of you through Threads, so hey Threads, knowing that most people have found the podcast through searches for podcasts makes it even more important for you to rate and review and subscribe because that helps the algorithm. Rather than saying not a lot of people are listening, it says people are listening and they're rating and reviewing and loving. And great, so please keep that going. That was a lot of preamble. Let's get into it. All right, so this is Women's History Month in the United States. Fun fact, Women's History Month in Canada is October. Not a lot of people know that, but that is true. And this past weekend was International Women's Day, which especially in Europe, it started in Europe, is a really important day to mark the contributions of women, although the contributions of women should be all the time. So I really loved the episode I put together for Black History Month because I really just kind of enjoyed finding these extra bits of information and researching and things like that all over the different parks and about the Imagineers to kind of put a nice story together about Black history and Black culture and Black Imagineers in the context of Walt Disney World so that you could mark Black History Month all the months of the year. And so I was likewise very excited about doing the same thing for March, for Women's History Month. But I really struggled with how to put the episodes together because I didn't just want to create an episode where you were hearing about kind of the same women like Mary Blair and Harriet Burns. And like, just to be clear, the impact that these women made on like the Disney storytelling, Walt Disney World, Disneyland type of thing is immeasurable, really. Like, these are important contributions, but I don't want to just tell the stories that you can get anywhere else. And so what am I going to do? Am I going to tell you stories about how like Mary Blair almost like died in obscurity from alcoholism and she spent the later half of her career like coloring ice cream boxes because she wasn't at Walt Disney World anymore? No, nobody wants to hear those stories. Nobody wants to hear those stories. Or do we talk about the, updates to rides like Pirates of the Caribbean in which they turned the scene about sex work, forced sex work into something that is related to women empowerment in economics, and the backlash to that is crazy and sexist. But no, nobody wants to hear about those stories either. Nobody wants to hear about the stories of the very few first female animators where the male dominant culture was so brutal at the studio that certain animators would like run out of the rooms crying, or the ink and paint department, which was predominantly women, were continuously harassed by the male animators and called the nunnery because women oftentimes were unmarried and probably, for the most part, to keep their jobs, had to offset the advances of these male animators. Nobody wants to hear those stories either. From the huge fan base that rides like Spaceship Earth or Carousel of Progress has, you also do not want to hear how problematic the historical narratives of those rides are from an intersectional feminist perspective. Nobody wants to hear that either in this episode. So you know what? I'm not going to talk about any of that stuff. Do not worry. Instead, what I'm going to be talking about, are princesses. Yes, princesses. Now, I don't know about you, but I remember like 25 years ago, there was a ton of research. One book was called like The Disney Princesses Are Eating My Daughter. There was this huge fear that the notion of the Disney princesses were going to make women, young women, girls, these flat, man-hungry type characters. And there was like this huge fear that was going to happen. That wasn't a really new fear to the 2000s. Those critiques about princesses, especially those OG princesses, Snow White, Sleeping Beauty, Cinderella, have been happening for a long time. But the thing is, I don't think there have been any studies to say, I don't know how right you were about that fear about Disney princesses. The fact is, the importance of princesses, fairy tales in particular, for young girls' development, and I should just say, like, women and femme people as well, is so important because women are protagonists in these stories. And while you can certainly say that, the OG princesses are just kind of waiting around for a man, that's actually not true at all. Those types of narratives don't take into account the particular context in that these stories were written and the lives that these women lived in. Like Cinderella, for example, or even Snow White. They didn't have access to literacy or education or names or money. Like they couldn't just go out and work. They were working inside for sure, but it's not like they just pack up their bags and go to the city and I don't know, work as a telephone operator or something. I don't know. I'm thinking about Spaceship Earth. That scene was okay. Like, these women didn't have a lot of choices. And again, things like literacy and the fact that marriage was the way to advance and circulate in society. Like, someday my prince will come. Sure. Okay. Well, she was 13 and being abused by your stepmother, and there was no father in sight. Like, having a prince come and marry her is the only way that she's going to get out of that situation. It's not because she is a passive figure. It's because she knows her options. And in fact, I'm talking about Snow White right now. If you think of the movie, she is very proactive in finding a place to stay, trying to make it livable, and then also being accommodating to the culture in which she is now participating in. And maybe it's not the way that you would participate in that culture in 2025. Maybe you'd be like, sorry guys, you got to clean this stuff up yourself. But she made the best of it. And I think that those are really important things to remember when it comes to princesses. I know for me, it is very difficult for me to share my love of princesses in like professional academic settings because it seems very infantilizing. But these are huge figures, archetypes, stories, narrative, myths, heroes, heroines that really help direct us in our lives, just like a whole bunch of other heroes and heroines. Like, nobody really, like dumps on Hermione or Harry Potter or other stories like that, because for some reason those narratives aren't considered like female narratives. But when it comes to female dominated narratives, fairy tales, these kind of like soft, more feminine type stories, it is really, really easy for people to criticize them. And for this episode for Women's History Month, I really want to encourage you. Although, you know what, solos, I'm sure you already do this. I'm sure you already kind of instinctively do this. So I don't want to suggest by any means that I don't think you don't already know this, but I want to highlight how some of these stories, how some of these princesses can help you think about your own solo vacation. So let's start with my girl, Cinderella. And that is a movie, of course, where the artistic design of it was designed by Mary Blair and really directed by her. And again, all the props in the world to her. Oh, actually, just speaking of women animators, Snow White was actually supposed to be a very sexy type of gal, and it was one of the women working in the animation studio that was like, no, I think that we should make her more childlike. So anyway, that's interesting. That is an interesting little tidbit of information that I picked up in a book called Queens of Animation, and it was a really great book. It was a history book. It was quite easy to read though, and a few of you are interested in like having a book club, and I think that might be a book if we were going to do a book club that we would do. Anyway, let's go back to Cinderella. So I saw this meme a while ago, and maybe you have also seen it like popping up around Pinterest, that said Cinderella didn't want a man. She wanted a night off and a new pair of shoes. I don't know about a new pair of shoes, but that is what she wanted. She wanted a night off. She wanted a night where she could connect with her mother, right? Because she wanted to wear her mother's dress. She wanted to dance. She wanted to kind of live in the type of life that she expected that she was going to live when she was growing up. And she wanted to do it without the duty that was placed on her by her stepmother and her stepsisters. She didn't want for them to not have a good time. She also just wanted to have a good time separate from them. And so when we think of Cinderella as just like wanting a man, that is not true. When we think of Cinderella embarking on her solo trip to the castle, really what she wanted was just a break from duty. And if you remember, she was very excited. She had the support of her animal friends and her fairy godmother. And when she got to the palace, she didn't know where to go. She was kind of anxious, but she knew that she wanted to be there. And she knew that she wanted to have a good time and that she was there to dance. And again, she didn't even know that that's who she was dancing with. She didn't even know she was dancing with the prince. It was just that although she had some anxiety about it, she just wanted to go and participate in this ball, in this community event, and wanted a break from duty. And so if you were going to use her to help you plan your own solo vacation, I want you to think about Cinderella going to a place like Magic Kingdom because, of course, that's where Cinderella would go on her solo vacation. She wanted a break from her duties around the castle. She wanted to have fun. She wanted to dance. She wanted to, again, like connect with her dead mother because, she pulled out that dress. She really wanted to have an amazing night that was going to be different than the rest of her humdrum life. And she also knew that it was not going to be forever. It was going to have this finite amount of time. And because of that, although she was quite nervous when she came in, she still went in. It's not like she got to the gates and was like, oh, you know what? This isn't a good idea. I don't know anyone. They don't know me. I might get in trouble, all that stuff. No. She still went in. And I think that those are such important qualities to think about if she was going to a place like Magic Kingdom. So number one, she had anxiety about going, about being there, but she still went forward because she knew that the elements that she really wanted from that trip, that break from duty, that connection with larger family, that connection with community, that sense of fun was going to be more important than just being a little bit of nervous when she comes in. She wanted a break from her regular duties. And so, again, if we're thinking about her helping us think about our own solo trip to Magic Kingdom, maybe what that means is that you're eating at a nice restaurant. You're eating at a restaurant that maybe you wouldn't have gone to normally, like not a quick service restaurant, but a sit-down restaurant. So you can have somebody wait on you for a while. And you could go at your own pace. And you can break through of that anxiety in order to recognize that if you knew that you needed a break from your daily kind of duties of caretaking and caregiving and all of that stuff, then you are there to ensure that you are also taken care of. Eating at a sit-down restaurant, for example, Cinderella's Royal Table, or even something that's more moderately priced, like the Plaza Ice Cream Shop, which I should say I've had some very good meals there. When I've gone, I like surprisingly good meals there. I've only been there like 3 times, but every time I've gone, I was like, yeah, this place is like not bad. That type of experience of being waited on, whether it is at the ice cream shop or it is at the fancy restaurant, Cinderella's Royal Table, will allow you, if you are channeling Cinderella's energy, to get out of that caregiving mode, caretaking mode, and get somebody to wait on you. Cinderella also really wanted to have fun. She wanted to go and she wanted to dance. And so maybe you are going to, like, if you were using her as an inspiration, maybe you're going to go and watch the parade and like dance along with the characters, because I'll tell you, that song, Festival of Fantasy, sorry about that, is very catchy and it is very hard to keep your body still. And so maybe like really embracing that type of fun atmosphere. Yes, sure, the rides, all of that, but it is the atmospheric element of music and dance and moving your body and being with others, kind of like a ball, could be a way that you could channel Cinderella's energy as well. I also maintain that Cinderella really wanted to connect with her family, her biological family. She wanted to wear her mother's dress, and I'm sure she also wanted to enact some class privilege that she was no longer enabled to enact with her stepmother ruling the roost. And so when you are at Magic Kingdom and you are channeling Cinderella for your own solo vacation, think about ways that you can also connect with family, not in a way that makes you sad that they aren't there, and so that gets you sad and anxious yourself, but rather as a way to create invisible ribbons between you and them, and whether those family members that you were thinking of, family members or friends that you're thinking of, or are alive and at home or have passed away, like how can you make those connections? How can you have those ribbons between those different experiences and those different people, even though they're not there? How can you honor the connections that you have with each other and the memories that you have with each other and the stories that you tell with each other as a solo while you're there? So one way that I do this is that there is this picture of my grandmother at Cinderella's royal table in the 1970s. And my aunt, who likes to say she knows everything about the family, was always like, no, she was never there. And I was like, well, I have this picture. And I have this picture of her there, and she is with Cinderella and the prince. And I brought the picture to Cinderella's royal table for my birthday one year, and there were staff members that had been there for 50 years. And so they talked about like the way the character dining experience was set up in the 70s. And we were able to find the exact place where the photograph was taken, because it's funny, like the Cinderella's Royal Table is this gorgeous, beautiful restaurant. But all the staff members or the cast members, if you ask them, especially the ones that have been there a long time, they're like, no, this is the same wallpaper as the 70s. Like very little has changed since the 70s, and it would be great for it to have a glow up. But instead, I don't see that. I really quite love it. So whenever I've gone to Cinderella's royal table, I'll show the picture and I'll take a picture in that same spot as a way to just kind of tie that ribbon between me and my grandmother who has passed. Other things that I've done in the parks when I am feeling lonely about family members who I wish were there. And look, I'm not a mother, and I know, or a parent, and so I know that is a different type of loneliness, or not even loneliness. I know it's a different type of ache that they are not there versus a sibling or a parent or a friend. So look, I just want to be very clear. I know it's different, but I have a sister who lives in Europe, and so I don't get to see her that often. And whenever I go to the Be Our Guest Castle, I think of her so much, because I was 10 and she was 3, and we were singing all the songs from Beauty and the Beast over and over and over and over and over again in the early 90s. And so there are times where I have FaceTimed her, and I have taken a picture with her on FaceTime with the PhotoPass photographer. And the PhotoPass photographers always get a kick out of this, and they often do a magic shot, and it's been a really fun way to just, again, draw that ribbon between me and a family member who I wish was there, even though it wouldn't be as good because it wouldn't be a solo vacation anymore. Family members who I wish were there but aren't there. Other things like putting a coin in the wishing well and thinking about a family member, or going to a spot you know that they would like and just taking a couple deep breaths and thinking about them. But also remembering that the more of yourself you are, the better you can be to others. And tying those ribbons between you and family members who aren't there is a really great way to do that. Just like Cinderella tried to do with the dress that she was going to wear to the ball. And all those extra ribbons, all those things that her mice and bird friends put on them were all ways to enhance those memories. So you can do that too. Speaking of Beauty and the Beast, Belle also took a solo vacation in Beauty and the Beast. Oh my God, no, not a vacation. She also took a solo journey in Beauty and the Beast, even though she was going to rescue her father. I mean, it is kind of a different thing, but she still went out there on her own with her little cape and her horse, and she went right there into the scary forest and into the scary castle to find her father and to free him. Now, of course, I don't expect any of you to be going to Disney World for those reasons. But one of the things that really stuck out to me when she's saying goodbye to her father is that she knows that he is going out of town for this convention, right? For this fair, this invention fair. She knows about it. It's part of her world. Ariel. Anyway, it's part of her world. So I can actually imagine Belle going on a solo trip separate from having to save her father, but maybe doing something like taking one of her father's inventions to one of these fairs, to one of these conventions, to one of these places to showcase different inventions. And when I think about traveling for learning, that I definitely think Belle would be all over, I think of going to Epcot. Yes, Epcot. In particular, World Showcase. Can't you imagine Belle being like, okay, great. Yeah, I'm going to take a solo vacation and I'm going to explore as much as I can around World Showcase. I certainly can. Belle is really interested in learning. She's interested in experiences by herself. She's interested in fairy tales, and you can get all of that at Epcot in World Showcase. First, I know that Epcot gets a lot of celebration for being able to drink around the world, all of that. But to me, Epcot World Showcase in particular are the series of cultural museums, really, that show different art and history and culture. Yeah, perhaps on a superficial level, but it's still there. Like, I don't know if I'll ever go to China, for example, but I have seen Chinese architecture through going to the China Pavilion at Epcot. And while that sense of kind of local international travel gets a bad rap, I mean, for some people that is that's the extent of what they can do because of finances or because of fears or because of capacity, like whatever. And I don't know, there's no reason to, I really want to swear a lot in this episode. I just want to just flag that there have been so many things that I have said in this particular episode where I have wanted to swear and I've held it back, and this is another moment of that. It's so difficult when people jump on things that that other people really enjoy. But like Belle could go to a place like World Showcase, and like let's say too that she goes to World Showcase rather than travel all those countries because she wanted to be close to her father who is elderly. Rather than go all over the world, she wants to stay more local. So I can see Belle really taking advantage of all of the learning in the pavilions, across the pavilions, to be able to learn as much as she can while she's at Walt Disney World, while she's going solo. Belle also really likes solo experience, whether that is because of her own inclination or because she's kind of ostracized in her community for learning. But that's what's so great about World Showcase as a solo, especially if you are there to do that kind of learning and cultural immersion. There are so many cool places across World Showcase that you can kind of pop into and have a moment to yourself and just do some reading, and you don't feel like rushed. Like one time, I was at Walt Disney World with my mother, and we were at Animal Kingdom, and Pandora had a walk-on line. And I've never ridden Pandora. I still haven't to this day. But we were like, let's just go through the line, for example, and just kind of see what it's like. And then my mom freaked out when we got to the front and she saw the ride vehicles. Anyway, it was a whole thing. Hashtag go solo. But even though we wanted to spend a lot of time looking at all the details of the queue, it was always so busy because people were behind us and people wanted to keep moving, and that's fine. Like, we let everybody go forward, but it wasn't a space where we could really just kind of sit and look and talk and point out things. Whereas at World Showcase, it is like that. There isn't people always rushing you and hassling you. You can find the beautiful like koi garden in the Japan pavilion, or all of the different details in the Moroccan pavilion, or the garden in the Canada pavilion, or the garden in the England pavilion. By the way, the England pavilion has tea garden tours during the Flower and Garden Festival, and those are cool. If you are somebody who likes to ask a lot of questions on tours, it might not be the best tour for you because the wonderful cast members have a particular script and don't know much more than that, and that is totally cool, no judgment. But if you were somebody that likes to ask a lot of questions, follow-up questions on tours, it might not be the best for you, or you have to actively swallow your tongue. I am not saying this from experience or anything. Maybe not. Anyway, there are just so many places that you can have these kind of solo experiences at Epcot. And I think that Belle is such a great princess to show that that is something that you can really kind of sit in as something that is really cool and awesome, that you can just be there and learn and be with yourself and not have to do what everyone else is doing. You don't have to go to Epcot and drink around the world. You don't have to go to Epcot and ride the rides. You can just go to Epcot and read all the like cultural museum type exhibits throughout the World Showcase. The other thing that we know Belle likes are books and fairy tales. And what's really cool about World Showcase is that you can meet a lot of princesses around the World Showcase. You can meet Anna and Elsa in Norway. You can meet Mulan in China. You can meet Snow White in Germany. You can meet Sleeping Beauty and Belle in France. And considering that Belle's favorite fairy tale is her own fairy tale, it would be quite apropos for her also to go meet herself in the France pavilion when she is at Epcot. And so I think that Belle would love to take a solo vacation to Epcot as a way to live these particular fairy tales. Oh, you can also meet Jasmine in Morocco, but Jasmine does not live in Morocco. She's just visiting Morocco. It's a little problematic, but the area that they have set up for her meet and greet is very cool. So definitely go check that out. Now, another female character who's not really a princess, but is a solo female traveler on a wondrous trip is Alice in Wonderland. And remember, Alice really wanted to find a sense of adventure. She wound up totally lost and disoriented and frustrated and anxious and scared in Wonderland. She wanted to break away from kind of rote book learning and expectations. She really wanted to be immersed in a particular environment, in a world of her own. And so if Alice was going to do a solo vacation, I think that she would end up in Hollywood studios, because there are so many different environments across Hollywood studios that it's very similar to Wonderland in that you never really know what you're going to get, and what you learned in one situation is not going to help you in another situation. Like, oh, I'm in 1930s Hollywood, and now I'm on a galaxy far, far away. Oh, and now I'm in a playground, a child's playground, and now I'm seeing the Muppets for the last time. R.I.P. There are so many different environments in Hollywood studios that I think really replicate Alice's solo journey. Now, also just remember how anxious, how sad, how frustrated, how confused, how disoriented Alice was, how she didn't know if she was going to find a way out. And I think that a lot of those qualities can help you also in your own solo planning, especially at a place like Hollywood studios that certainly won't be as disorienting as Wonderland, but those same type of qualities that she demonstrated in that movie, you can think about if you were also feeling kind of disoriented and worried and maybe a little frightened, maybe you've never done a solo trip before and you're like, oh my God, what is this? So let's learn a little bit from Alice. Number one, Alice just kept going. Alice just kept going. Even though she was really thrown off, she really just kept going, kept on her journey. And so if you're at a place like Hollywood Studios and you're maybe it's your first day on your first solo vacation and you're like, I don't know if I should do this. I'm feeling weird. I'm feeling off. I'm feeling kind of scared. What is it going to be like by myself? Take Alice's advice, our solo heroine, and just keep going. Explore as much as you can. Be curious, curiouser and curiouser about what you are going to discover and what you're going to find out. And sure, sometimes you're going to be thrown off. Sometimes you're going to feel great and you're going to feel as big as the world. And other times you're going to feel kind of small and confused, and just keep going. Know that all of that up and down and all of those types of big emotions are part of your trip. And again, I've cried at Hollywood Studios a lot because the music of that Sunset Boulevard, Hollywood Boulevard area reminds me so much of my grandmother and reminds me so much of traveling to Disney again when my sister was 3 and I was 10 in the early 1990s. And there's just this crazy sense of nostalgia. And I just can't help but kind of well up. And so when you're on your solo vacation and you're feeling those big feelings, I also listened to the Book of Mormon musical a lot this weekend. So anyway, I'm just thinking of when you feel those feelings, turn it off. Anyway, don't turn it off. When you're feeling those big feelings at a place like Hollywood Studios or at Walt Disney World on your solo vacation, do what Alice did. Do what I did, which is let those feelings be shown. Just kind of ride them out. Do what you need to do. Feel all of those feelings, but don't let it stop you from going to the next place. Alice's tears brought her to a totally new environment. And so see what you can learn through feeling those big feelings. And okay, I think I've told some of this story on the podcast, but like 15 years ago, I went to Disney with my family and my then partner. And okay, long story short, maybe I'll tell. Long story short, I had a nervous breakdown after Mission Space at Epcot. I had a complete nervous breakdown. I was crying and laughing, and I could not stop crying. And I was in the bathroom outside the Norway Pavilion. So there were like little princesses, like little girls in their princess outfits coming in and out because they were having breakfast at Akershus. And I was in there looking in the mirror, just crying and be like, why are you crying? You're at Disney. You're so happy. Okay. And I had to sit on a bench just to because I could not stop crying. My family left me because they're like, maybe you'll be better on your own. Oh my God, that sounds so sad. And then eventually I just had to go back to the hotel room and take a nap because I was just like, my nervous system was totally thrown off. But here's the thing, and this is why I'm telling you the story in this case. Nobody looked at me weird. Nobody looked at me weird. Everyone just kind of like let me have my moment. And I think that people may have intervened if I kind of stuck around one place longer. But the thing is, it just kind of seemed like people were like, all right, well, you're at Disney. Big emotions happen at Disney. Do your thing, lady, you know? And so I say this in relationship to Alice in Wonderland because if you, like her, get really kind of fearful and get big emotions while you're at Disney and you feel like you're going to cry, like, don't feel like you need to hide it. It's not like the real world. People know that it is this emotional journey when you're out at Walt Disney World, and maybe you just kind of need that at the moment. So take that moment to yourself, but don't let it keep you stuck. Use those tears to move you to another place. Alice also wanted a break from the everyday. She wanted a break from book learning. She wanted to be in different worlds of her own, and she encountered a wonderland. So at a place like Hollywood Studios, you can really explore the different worlds that you want to be part of. You have Andy's Backyard. You have Star Wars Land. You have the 1930s, Hollywood, the land that always was and there never was. Then there's the things like the Indiana Jones Stunt Spectacular, the Beauty and the Beast show, the final vestiges of Muppets Land for another month or so, a whole history exhibit on Walt Disney Animations that is kind of tucked behind Minnie and Mickey's Runaway Railway. There are so many different environments that you can go in, and if you go in curiouser and curiouser, you really do need to transfix yourself in these different places to really fully experience it. And I say I've never really spent a lot of time in Star Wars Land. One time when I went there, I went to get a soda container for a friend back home, and they said something to me about what planet are you from? And I was like, I don't know, Princess Land? I was so thrown off, but I really should have embraced it more. I should have been curious about how to respond back. But in that case, I actually was there with somebody and I was kind of anxious about their reaction. And again, when you're going solo, you just kind of be in yourself, be curious. Imagine that we are all mad here. And how can you learn more about the different environments that you're in if you really fully embrace the storyline that you are part of by being in these different lands? And so Alice in Wonderland as a solo traveler heroine can really help you think through, again, those big emotions, adjusting to different situations, and really being curiouser and curiouser about what you can learn about the different environment and yourself on your solo travel. And one final princess that I want to bring in is Aurora, is Sleeping Beauty. And, my girl is out there in bare feet, just walking around the forest like she owns the place. She knows all the animals, she knows all the trees, and she really just wants to get some bigger perspective rather than just be in her little house. She wants to think about her dreams. She wants to connect with nature. And therefore, on her solo trip, I think she would end up at Animal Kingdom. Like, she is just so, like, I love that she is in bare feet. Like, I don't know, when she just like leaves her little cottage in bare feet with her big skirt, I just love it. I just love it so much. It's such an interesting detail. And it really shows how she is connected to nature. And so if she was going to take a solo trip, although I guess she doesn't really take a solo trip in Sleeping Beauty, but you can tell that she is solo a lot because she has created a whole world for herself. And she has dreams, she has places that are outside what the other people in her life think about or imagine, right? Her fairy godmother aunts probably does not realize the extent of her dreams, the extent of her knowledge about this different landscape. And so if we're using that energy to explore a place like Animal Kingdom, then we can really use it to embrace the different kind of dreams and the different types of stories that we have and the ways that they come alive through landscaping, through nature, through flora, through fauna. Get it? Do you see how I did that? Because the names of the fairies. Anyway, through connecting with the different dreams that you can have in these places that might be so far from a place that you actually might go to in your life. Like, how can you dream differently and bigger when you are in an environment that is so unlike your own environment? And I think that's what Aurora was intimating through the dreams that she has, that it brings her to a place like I can imagine that her world was very, very small. It was really just that cabin. And so she created a much bigger life for herself by dreaming, by exploring nature, by creating and making friends with the different animals in that area as a way to broaden her world. And so if you also feel like your world is quite small, then a place like Animal Kingdom can really, really help you also connect with nature and flora and fauna. It can really help you dream bigger about the world that you live in. And even though that might not be the life that you lead, the world that you live in, there are giant continents across the ocean. There are giant continents of Africa and Asia that have so much different everything than what we might find in North America. Because I know most of you, not all of you, but most of you are listening in North America. And so as a way to dream bigger, Animal Kingdom is a place where you can really immerse yourself in thinking about spaces that are broader than where you are. And so if you're going solo, use Aurora's notion of dreaming. Think and tap into Aurora's sense that she probably had of living a very small, tight world to really expand your own world. Like, use that as an opportunity to get to know yourself and get to know your dreams in a bigger, different environment. So if you feel sometimes, and I know I really felt this 10 years ago when I was doing some care work for a family member, that I just felt my world was really small and really frustratingly small. Like I couldn't get out of it. And so dreaming and wishing and planning are ways to get out of it. And so if you are thinking about your own solo vacation because you were also feeling this sense of tightness or smallness in your life, like you just can't get out of a small community that you just kind of have developed for yourself, and maybe it's wonderful and comforting and all this, but you just want a chance to expand, then use the ideas of Aurora, the heroine in Sleeping Beauty, to really push beyond those limits, to explore, to walk with bare feet, to be able to see different animals, to be able to see different places. And Animal Kingdom is such a great way to do that. So while I've covered these 4 female heroines, mostly princesses, in the Disney canon while thinking about our solo travels, just a reminder that you can tap into other female Disney characters across the Walt Disney World Resort any time of the year. And there are certain places where you can really kind of pick up on certain stories of these female characters. For example, Moana, obviously at the Polynesian, but I actually wouldn't kind of stick there for Moana. Of course, Moana at the Polynesian just is very, like, it makes sense. She's all over the place, especially at the new tower. But Moana also has a huge sense of adventure and destiny. Like, very much, the plot of Moana is basically Joseph Campbell's The Hero story. And it's a very simplistic plot, but it can be very, very impactful. And so I actually would also place Moana at the Animal Kingdom Lodge, for example, because that is a giant hotel. The two different areas, the deluxe resort and then the deluxe villas, which is the Disney Vacation Club, but they're basically the same, and it's a huge property. And I talk about this all the time on the podcast. You can really, it's kind of out of the way, so no one is like policing you. So for example, at the Polynesian Resort, because they don't want people to come over from Magic Kingdom to go swim in the Polynesian pool or to use the Polynesian facilities, for example, if you're not staying there, you need to be able to like swipe your Magic Band to get access to the pools. But at Animal Kingdom Lodge, because it is so out of the way, you don't need to do that. ... Now, of course, if you're not staying at Animal Kingdom Lodge, don't swim in those pools. I certainly have never stayed at Animal Kingdom Lodge, period. Also, they have some really nice pools that I've enjoyed swimming in, period. Unrelated. The Animal Kingdom Lodge really provides a place for you to explore and to explore on your own. I've talked on social media, but also on the podcast about the ways that you can see the animals, not only from the viewing platforms, but also the fire escapes at the end of the hallways. And cast members told me to go out to the end of the hallways to see how far I could go. Moana reference. ... Get it? To see the animals there, and I have always really, really enjoyed it. There's also the largest collection of African art and cultural artifacts outside the continent of Africa at the Animal Kingdom Lodge hotels. And so if you are walking through the different hallways, you'll see different displays with information about different cultural pieces. There are cultural ambassadors from the continent of Africa that work at Animal Kingdom Lodge that often provide small little lessons on things like ecology and history and culture as well. I've participated in a few of those, even though I'm a solo adult. And I mean, they're designed for kids, but again, I've participated in them. And so, yeah, you can tap into Moana at the Polynesian, sure. But if you want to tap into that adventurous spirit, then go and spend a whole afternoon, a whole day at Animal Kingdom Lodge, and don't go swimming. Never go swimming unless you're staying there, but also go swimming and eat their delicious food, talk to the cultural ambassadors, find these really cool cultural artifacts, read all the different information in the exhibits, go look at the animals. Did I say delicious food? Yeah. There are just so many amazing things to do there. So if you want to tap into Moana's adventurous spirit, then spending a day at Animal Kingdom Lodge is such a cool way to do that. And there's no entry fee, right? I was just thinking, if you go to Riviera on an Uber, for example, you need to show a dining reservation, but you can just take the bus into Animal Kingdom Lodge, and you can also take an Uber there if you wanted. I never needed a dining reservation. Anyway, it's very easy. It's very easy. If you want to tap into Snow White, you can go to Wilderness Lodge. They do have a character dining experience there that everyone always really loves. They definitely have a problem with food temperature. I've been there maybe 3 times and have yet to eat anything that is really the temperature it should be. But the atmosphere is so great and the presentation is so unique and the cast members are so amazing that it is definitely worth going back. But Be Our Guest and Cinderella's Royal Table get a really bad rap for food. And I should say that I've had delicious, good meals there. I've always really enjoyed them. And they have been better than my meals at the Snow White character dining at Wilderness Lodge. But I'm not saying don't go there. I'm just saying there's definitely a problem with with the heat coming from the kitchen. And I've like sent things back and it comes back the exact same temperature. And I'm like, okay, thank you. Like, I mean, it's just the kitchen. It's just something happening in the kitchen. If you want to tap into some of your Rapunzel power, you can go to the Riviera Resort and see the beautiful mosaic that they have in the archway between the Skyliner and the resort. You don't even need to go into the hotel, but that is a really beautiful place to tap into your Rapunzel energy if you wanted to. That's not just a bathroom like you can see at Magic Kingdom. Elsa also is one of our solo traveler heroines, and I can kind of imagine her in like the Bay Lake or Contemporary Resort towers because she can be up high and look over her kingdom. Now, those towers are not designed for Frozen. They're after The Incredibles, and I've never seen those, so I don't really know any of the particular references. But if you wanted to tap into some Elsa energy and it's in your budget, then maybe that deluxe resort is a high room in the deluxe resort is a place to go. But also, actually, if you did want to tap into that high Elsa looking over the kingdom energy, you could also go to Coronado, even though I think of that as a very hot and Elsa is obviously very cold. And you could get a tower room there. You could also go to one of the restaurants or the lounges, the Dahlia Lounge, where you can see 3 different parks from the outdoor patio, which is really cool. So with all of that being said, happy International Women's Day. Happy National History Month for women. Which princesses or female characters or female Imagineers do you tap into when you are going to Disney World solo? And how do these characters help you think more broadly about your solo vacations? I can't wait to hear about it. And this is a really fun kind of way to bring some of these characters into the parks and into our present complicated lives, where things like solo vacations to many of us are not just a sense of fun, but also a real sense of healing and restoration, and some tears, just floating around in a bottle with our own tears. Oh gosh, that's not a great way to end. Please make sure you fill out the survey. It's going to be up for another 2 weeks. Next week, the episode is going to be about budgeting, kind of. It's really more about making the most of the money that you are going to spend at Disney. I don't think it's great to go in just trying to save money for the sake of saving money. Now, look, that's not my philosophy in life generally. So if that is if you are someone that really is frugal and you relish in that, then that is wonderful. But the suggestions in next week's episodes are not bring a sandwich to Magic Kingdom. If you'd like to bring a sandwich to Magic Kingdom, that's great. But instead, the suggestions are going to be if you only have a limited budget, then research the best things to eat on that budget so you're not just eating French fries at the end of the day. So that's my type of budgeting. And as I said in the episode, because I've already recorded it, my grandfather is rolling over in his grave that is how I understood budgeting. But oh well, c'est la vie, that's me. All right, until next week, solos. I will talk to you then. Bye. Hey solos, it's Samantha. I hope you enjoyed this episode and all the episodes of Disney Solo Magic, the #1 podcast for solo travel to Disney World. Let's keep this podcast as the #1 podcast for solo travel to Disney World, and please make sure you rate, review, and subscribe on any and all platforms that you listen. It'd be also really great if you supported the podcast by buying me a coffee. There is a link in the description below where you can go and pay with your Apple Pay for $3 American, which is about $5 Canadian, to help support the podcast. Also remember, for the month of March, there is a survey that you can also get in the link to the description below, where you can vote not only on my upcoming trip, but also about the direction of the podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and I can't wait to read your feedback. Bye.